And there's still fallout for Democrats over the Louis Farrakhan hubbub. So Louis Farrakhan obviously is an anti-Semite. We played clips of him a couple of days ago in his latest iteration of anti-Semitism. He is still, for some odd reason, given a Twitter verified check mark, which is an amazing thing, right? We were told that you would have your verification removed, like Richard Spencer had his verification removed by Twitter because he's a disgusting racist. Okay, I thought that was a bad move because verification on Twitter is supposed to be designed to prevent fraud. It's supposed to be designed to prevent people from pretending to be Richard Spencer, for example. Why you'd want to do that's beyond me. But pretend to be Richard Spencer, and that's what the check mark is for. So for fake Ben Shapiro accounts, they can be distinguished from the real Ben Shapiro account by the blue check mark. But Twitter decided they were going to use the blue check mark as a sign of approval. So they got rid of the blue check mark for Richard Spencer. They did not get rid of it for Louis Farrakhan. So Louis Farrakhan is out there tweeting, making a fool of himself. And he's also, he tweeted this 24 hours ago. The FBI has been the worst enemy of black advancement. The Jews have control over those agencies of government. Okay, this is a guy who's been embraced by 3 of the 4 heads of the Women's March. Happy International Women's Day, gang. By 3 of the 4 heads of the International Women's March. And now a woman named Tamika Mallory, who actually went to Louis Farrakhan's latest lecture with the Nation of Islam. And this lecture included him talking about the satanic Jew and all the rest of it. She has written a defense of herself. So here is what she wrote. Okay, this is for news1.com, which is, I believe, a black-oriented political website. She says, I proudly serve as a leader for one of the largest women's advocacy organizations in the world. For that reason, my recent presence at the Nation of Islam Savior's Day convocation troubled some of the very people who I have fought for and worked alongside for most of my life. I've heard the pain and concern of my LGBTQAI siblings. I don't know when AI joined it. Is it artificial intelligence, part of LGBTQ, or am I screwing up those initials? Maybe. My Jewish friends and black women, including those who do and those who don't check off either of those other boxes. I affirm the validity of those feelings, and as I continue to grow and learn as both an activist and as a woman, I will continue to grapple with the complicated nature of working across ideological lines and the question of how to do so without causing harm to vulnerable people. This one's not tough. Don't go to lectures by an open anti-Semite. Really not difficult. Amazing that Barack Obama was able to get away with it with Reverend Wright. It is not surprising that these women are able to get away with it with the Women's March. She says, I didn't expect my presence at Savior's Day to lead anyone to question my beliefs, especially considering that I've been going to this event regularly for over 30 years. Okay, you're not helping, lady. That doesn't help your case. Okay, if your case is, I'm not a radical anti-Semite, I just go and listen to Louis Farrakhan spout about the satanic Jew and the white devil every year for 30 years, that's weird. Kind of weird. Now, I go to synagogue every week. If the rabbi said things that I thought were truly racist or awful, I would leave, because why would I go to a service where the rabbi did that? But she goes to Savior's Day every year, apparently for 30 years. She says, I first went with my parents when I was just a little girl and would begin attending on my own after my son's father was murdered nearly 17 years ago. In that most difficult period of my life, it was the women of the Nation of Islam who supported me, and I've always held them close to my heart for that reason. Okay, what does that have to do with Farrakhan being an awful, egregious, disgusting anti-Semite? Nothing. Because I'm the same woman who helped build an intersectional movement. Intersectional just means a movement that is built on identity politics, that fights for the rights of all people and stands against the hatred and discrimination of all forms, except against the Juden. I'm the same person today I was before Savior's Day, which begs the question, why are my beliefs being questioned now? Well, her beliefs are being questioned now because we have tape of her at this event. That's the answer. She says, I was raised in activism and believe that as historically oppressed people, blacks, Jews, Muslims, and all people must stand together to fight racism, anti-Semitism, and Islamophobia. Except that she's not going to throw Farrakhan under the bus anywhere in here. Anywhere in here. And we'll continue with this in just a second, because it really is amazing. It's amazing the length to which she goes to avoid saying Farrakhan's name. There's an entire piece about Louis Farrakhan, and not once is Louis Farrakhan's name mentioned. She says, I believe that LGBTQAI people are not an abomination or a creation of man, but simply people, and that religion is not to be used as a tool to abuse, divide, harm, bully, or intimidate, except when I go to Nation of Islam meetings. Where my people are is where I must also go. I go into difficult spaces. I attend meetings with police and legislators, the very folks so much of my protest has been directed towards. I've partnered and sat with countless groups, activists, religious leaders, and institutions over the past 20 years. I've worked in prisons as well as with present and former gang members. It is impossible for me to agree with every statement or share every viewpoint of the many people who I have worked with or will work with in the future. As I do not wish to be held responsible for the words of others, when my own history shows that I stand in opposition to them, I also do not think it is fair to question anyone who works with me, who supports my work, and who is a member of this movement because of the ways I may have fallen short here or in any other instance. And she says it is her intention to walk in the tradition of Dr. Dorothy Height, successor to Marion McLeod Bethune as president of the National Council of Negro Women. In 1995, she faced criticism for participating in the Million Man March, which was organized by the Nation of Islam. She said financial support was withheld from her organization, and she said, and she stood strongly and addressed the Million Man March anyway, and she said, I am here because you are here. Oh, isn't that nice? Except that, again, you've been going here for 30 years. How hard is it to condemn anti-Semites if you're in the middle of an intersectional movement? Apparently super hard, because you are most afraid of alienating other members of your intersectional community than you are of alienating open anti-Semites like Louis Farrakhan. Pretty astonishing. But this is how the left operates now. So you are a bad person if you are not of the Marxist left, and you're a bad person if you question people who are of the Marxist left. New York Times columnist Bari Weiss has found this out over in her position at the New York Times. Bari Weiss is not a conservative. Bari Weiss is probably, I don't know if she voted for Hillary Clinton. I would assume she did. But Bari is, I would say, a mainstream classical liberal. She's certainly not a hardcore conservative by any stretch of the imagination. But she wrote a column for the New York Times talking about the pathetic attempts by people on the left to continuously call people who are not of the radical left fascists. And she points out all of the protests that we've seen over the last week against Jordan Peterson and Christina Hoff Sommers and a variety of other figures. I mean, Steven Pinker is being called alt-right now. We talked about Steven Pinker, the Harvard psychologist, who has been an ardent Democrat for his entire life and now is being labeled right-wing and labeled a fascist because he refuses to buy into politically correct notions about non-differentiation between the sexes, for example. So she wrote a piece, New York Times columnist Bari Weiss. She penned an op-ed explaining the rising tendency on the left to label all those who are not sufficiently woke as fascists. Right? She's, of course, exactly correct. I've been labeled a fascist by a bunch of people on the left. They call me alt-right, which is just insane, considering I was the alt-right's #1 target during the 2016 election cycle. Weiss writes this, quote, "We live in a world in which politically fascistic behavior, if not the actual philosophy, is unquestionably on the rise." And she names Vladimir Putin and Xi Jinping and Bashar Assad. But she continues, "These are generally not the extremists that leftists focus on. Instead, they seem to believe that the real cause for concern are the secret authoritarians passing as liberals and conservatives in our midst." So who are these people? Christina Hoff Sommers and Laura Kipnis of Northwestern University, who questioned whether people should be run out of town on a rail in campus show trials. If a professor has sex consensually with a student, is that deserving of being fired or destroyed? Ayaan Hirsi Ali, who is an atheist, right? A black female atheist who's now being considered a fascist because she objects to the excesses of radical Islam. Mary Beard, who's another feminist who's being run out of town on a rail. She says, by tossing people like Mary Beard and Christina Hoff Sommers into the slop bucket with the likes of Richard Spencer, they are attempting to place their responsible ideas firmly outside the mainstream. They are trying to make criticism of identity politics, radical Islam, and third-wave feminism, among various other subjects, verboten. For even the most minor transgressions, as in the case of Professor Beard, people are turned radioactive. The main effect is that these endless accusations of fascism or misogyny or alt-right dull the effects of the words themselves. As they are stripped of meaning, they strip us of our sharpness, of our ability to react forcefully to real fascists and misogynists or members of the alt-right. Okay, this is, of course, exactly correct. Everything Bari Weiss says here is right. So what was the reaction of people on the left? Amanda Marcotte, who is one of the stupidest humans on planet Earth. She writes for Salon.com. Here's what she tweeted, quote, "Remember, Bari Weiss calls herself a classic liberal, a favorite term of alt-righters who mistakenly think they're cleverly fooling you." So the entire point that Bari Weiss was making is that the left keeps using labels on mainstream conservatives and liberals. And Amanda Marcotte's solution is that clearly Bari Weiss is a fascist alt-righter. Just fantastic. If the left thinks they're going to win any contests through this, they must be out of their minds. We have now boiled down politics to culture wars, and these are not culture wars the left is likely to win if they continue along these lines. In other news, Stormy Daniels is back in the news, and CNN is just beside itself. So when I go to work out, one of the things that is unfortunate is that CNN is what's on the TV. Well, that means that it was wall-to-wall Stormy Daniels coverage yesterday. So Stormy Daniels' lawyer is now suing the president to try and avoid an injunction. So Michael Cohen, Trump's lawyer, as we know, signed an agreement with Stormy Daniels, former porn star, or current porn star, I guess she's still a porn star, and paid her $130,000 to keep her story under wraps. And now Daniels is suing Trump because she says that Trump did not actually sign that agreement. Now, legally speaking, it's not clear that that actually is a good legal case. Like, if I sign an agreement and then you don't countersign and send it back to me, not supremely clear that I'm still not bound by the agreement. So, I mean, because the reason being that if there was a meeting of the minds, then there could theoretically be a constructed agreement. But in any case, she's claiming that the Trump campaign paid her off and that they then did not sign a contract with her. She files her lawsuit on Tuesday, and then Cohen obtained a temporary restraining order against her, prohibiting her from violating an NDA she signed in October 2016, just before the election. Cohen allegedly dispatched his own attorney, Lawrence Rosen, to caution Daniels against breaking the terms of the order. Michael Avenatti is Daniels' lawyer. He told NBC News that he is not going to be stopped by this. He said, earlier today, Mr. Cohen, through his attorney, Mr. Rosen, further threatened my client in an effort to prevent her from telling the truth about what really happened. We do not take kindly to these threats, nor will we be intimidated. So, I don't know, getting into the legal vagaries of this is not really worthwhile. There are really only two questions of any sense. One is, did Trump know that his lawyer was paying off Stormy Daniels? And two, do we care? Those are the only two questions that matter here. So the media obviously focusing in like a laser beam on all of this. Sarah Huckabee Sanders was grilled yesterday from the podium. Apparently Trump was very unhappy with how Sarah Huckabee Sanders answered these questions. He wanted her to say in more convincing fashion that she thinks that Trump didn't know about the payment by Michael Cohen, his lawyer, to Stormy Daniels. Here's Sarah Huckabee Sanders answering some questions.
The president has addressed these directly and made very well clear that none of these allegations are true. This case has already been won in arbitration, and anything beyond that, I would refer you to the president's outside counsel.
So she wouldn't answer what exactly the arbitration case was. She didn't answer what it meant to have won this case in arbitration. And then she was asked repeatedly whether Trump knew that Cohen was paying off Stormy Daniels. Now, let's be frank about this, okay? Let's just be clear. Obviously, Trump knew. Of course, Trump knew. Okay? Anyone who thinks Trump didn't know is a fool. This is just ridiculous. Lawyers don't go around spending $130,000 on behalf of clients to pay off their former porn star lovers out of the goodness of their heart. It's just not something that happens. And to suggest to anybody that they ought to buy that account is just insane. You have to be a crazy person to actually believe that, or you have to be so in the tank for Trump that you are willing to overlook basic reality. Obviously, Trump knew his lawyer was paying off Stormy Daniels, which brings us to the second point. Does anyone care about any of this? Now, there are two sub-questions there. One is, do we care in general? And the second is this a violation of campaign finance law? Not clear this is a violation of campaign finance law. A settlement outside of court that allows you to pay somebody to keep quiet is not rare in the legal world. In fact, John Edwards was basically paying alimony to a camera woman that he knocked up, and she was pregnant with his baby. He paid her $900,000 from campaign funds, and that was not a violation of law according to the courts. So if that's not a violation of law, I'm not sure why $130,000 is a violation of law. They're going to have to go further than just saying that Trump paid off a porn star to say this is a violation of campaign finance law, maybe as an in-kind contribution by Michael Cohen or something, but it's going to be kind of hard to make this particular case. Then there's the more general question, should we care? So on a moral level, yes, we should care that the president of the United States is a douche with regard to women, okay? President Trump is not great on the female front. The fact that this is even mildly controversial is, again, demonstrative of the fact that we have broken down into tribal identity. I'm sorry if it hurts feelings. The president of the United States has had 3 wives. He has cheated on all of those wives. Each and every one of those wives has been cheated on. We are only lucky that Stormy Daniels is not the current first lady of the United States, because that's what Trump does. Okay, Trump is a sleazebag with regard to women. He always has been a sleazebag with regard to women. He is the kind of person who said in interviews that nothing matters as long as you've got a beautiful and young piece of ass. He's the kind of person who said that surviving the 1970s without acquiring an STD was his own personal Vietnam. This is not a guy of quality with regard to how he treats women in his sex life. That said, does anyone care? No, because he's been like this his entire life. We already knew this is baked into the cake. So, should we care? Yes. Should it make a difference? Yes. Will it make a difference? No, because we already know what we're getting. Okay, bottom line, we already know what we're getting. So the media's attempt to try and turn this into a big scandal, it's not going to be a big scandal because we already know. It's not a thing.